Have you ever had someone tell you a secret that changed the way you saw things? Like maybe a friend told you they had a crush on someone, and now every time they have a seemingly innocent conversation with that person, you know that they're trying to flirt, even if neither of them are very good at it. It feels great to be in the know. That's why my favorite device in books, movies, and TV shows has always been dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is when the audience knows more than the characters. So it's like that moment in a horror movie when you know the killer is about to kill someone, and you're like, no, Jada Pinkett Smith, that isn't your boyfriend. It's actually the killer wearing a mask, and your boyfriend is bleeding out in a movie theater bathroom. And then Jada Pinkett Smith gets stabbed, and you're like, come on, Jada. If you just listened to me, then you wouldn't have gotten stabbed. And then no one notices she's been stabbed because everyone in the theater is running around screaming and laughing at a movie that's glorifying Sidney Prescott's trauma. And it's a pretty poignant metaphor for media sensationalism of tragic events that was inspired by the televised O.J. Simpson trials only 2 years prior to the movie being released. You know that moment? Anyway, like I said, I've always loved dramatic irony, and one of the biggest ways that this is accomplished in movies is by using an unrestricted narrative rather than a restricted narrative. Hey, that's the name of the video. When the audience is given more information than the main character or characters, typically through showing other characters' experiences or points of view, that is an unrestricted narrative. When the audience is only given the same information as the main character or characters without that same omniscient point of view, that is a restricted narrative. Unrestricted narratives give the impression that you are an outsider looking in because you typically have all the relevant information to the story, no matter where, when, or to whom it is happening, whereas the restricted narrative helps you to see through the main character's eyes, as you are only privy to their thoughts, feelings, and actions. Two of my favorite examples of each of these narrative structures is The Truman Show and The Usual Suspects. Let's tackle The Truman Show first. If you don't know, The Truman Show is a story about a man named Truman who, from birth, has been filmed as part of The Truman Show. His friends and family are actors, his hometown is a set, and through all of this, he has no idea he's being filmed. Everything has a camera on it to film and track Truman's every move. There's product placement everywhere, and his whole life has been a carefully scripted TV show. The movie follows Truman as he begins to realize the truth and see through the veil that has been placed on him for so long. The whole point of The Truman Show is that the audience knows more than Truman does. From the very first lines of the movie, we're told this.
While the world he inhabits is, in some respects, counterfeit, there's nothing fake about Truman himself.
And so, from the very beginning, we understand that we know something that Truman does not. The unrestricted narrative shows us the perspective of the show's creator, the behind-the-scenes element of putting on The Truman Show, and the outside world, where people watch Truman day in and day out. The unrestricted narrative gives the audience the same kind of voyeuristic perspective that the people in the world of The Truman Show have, as we all watch Truman begin to figure out that the world he inhabits may not be what he thought. This perspective also allows for a more comedic, satirical aspect to this movie, because from the beginning we understand the social commentary that is trying to be achieved about the nature of reality TV, and how in many cases it's actually extremely choreographed. If the audience wasn't clued into the secret, The Truman Show could easily be a thriller mystery. Both Truman and the audience would understand that there's something wrong, but neither would know what it was, and the movie could have been suspenseful as the audience and Truman put the pieces together at the same time. However, the unrestricted narrative allows us to take a step back, see everything for what it is, and laugh at Jim Carrey's antics.
Mardi Gras!
And at the end, when Truman's at the edge of the world and is about to step through the door, we know what's waiting on the other side. But for him, it's a leap of faith into a world he has never known. On the other side of things, let's break down the restricted narrative of The Usual Suspects. Quick synopsis, The Usual Suspects is about 5 criminals who are brought together in a seemingly random set of circumstances until they find out that they have been contracted for a job by the mysterious crime legend Kaiser Soze. After the job, 4 of the 5 criminals are presumed dead, and the story follows Verbal Kint, the only survivor of the 5, as he tells the story of how the whole thing panned out to Agent Dave Kuyan, who's convinced that one of the 4 criminals, Dean Keaton, is actually alive and is in fact the infamous Kaiser Soze. In The Usual Suspects, it can be hard to tell that this movie is a restricted narrative at first. We see information that other characters receive, not just the main character Verbal, which is what you would see in an unrestricted narrative. But the important part is that Verbal is narrating everything. He is the one telling the story to the detective and the audience as it occurred through his eyes.
Believe me, I tried, but Keaton wouldn't have it.
It was too far-fetched for him.
So now you may think that the restricted narrative puts us in Verbal shoes. But, in one of the greatest plot twists of all time, you find out that Verbal has far more information than the audience does when it is revealed that he was in fact, spoiler alert, the infamous Kaiser Soze himself, and had been stringing both Special Agent Dave Kuyan and the audience along with a fabricated story. So, the audience has been seeing this story through the eyes of Dave Kuyan as he listens to Verbal, not through Verbal's experiences himself. This is a brilliant example of how this film necessitates a restricted narrative to achieve its goal. If the audience had an unrestricted point of view, we would just be able to see that Verbal was lying the whole time, as we would have more information than just his unreliable narrator as he tells this story. We get hints, such as certain phrases that he uses that, once you know the twist, feel like he's winking at the audience.
Kaiser Soze, or whatever you want to call him, he knows where I am right now.
Is he the one that killed Keaton?
No, but I'm sure Keaton is dead.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
But the way the story is structured, Verbal can lie about everything, and there's no one to counteract his story. They're all dead. So, the audience is left in suspense, and the twist hits hard.
And like that, he's gone.
So much of the experience of a movie is what you make of it. That's why one of my favorite movies ever is still High School Musical 2, because of that pure nostalgia factor and, of course, some of the best and most iconic dance moves of all time. But filmmakers are able to have a large impact on what the audience will experience during a movie. It's up to them to either string us along, giving us crumbs that lead up to the big surprise, or let us in on the joke from the beginning, pulling back the curtain and revealing that it isn't a wizard at all, just a humble man who loves hot air balloons. And that's what an unrestricted versus restricted narrative is all about.